Right, back again, this time once more with Kess. So I've been very inconsistent in my commanders lately, having broken out of my Brea comfort zone. It's a real challenge to figure out what to do with these decks and how to do it. The basics, of course, are the same, but it's the details that'll get you. And I think with the past version of Kess that I had, it wasn't. I don't think it was. I don't think it was good enough. I got quite frustrated with it. I did some testing against five color bad stuff, and he just crushed me repeatedly with aggressive decks. And what I probably should have concluded was that I needed more removal, more early game interaction. Instead, I just thought, okay, well, Kess is just not that good. Switched over to Alaro. I'll use Humility, Moat, Abyss. I ended up putting Abyss in Alaro. The problem with that is when those cards don't come up, or when you can't get them on the board, for example, you're stuck on 3 mana, your opponent has counter magic, they have removal for the card, any of these situations, then you're left with a deck that's relying on these enchantments but doesn't have the enchantment in play for various reasons, and you just become even more of a punching bag. Aloro, of course, blunts a great deal of the damage that can be done to you, and it does some really crazy stuff. I think that if you're into Aloro, like you just like playing it, I think you should definitely could take the deck list that I posted most recently and make it yours. And I think that there's, but it's on the right track. I definitely feel like that deck was on the right track for what Aloro can do. However, I don't think what Aloro can do is the best thing that you can be doing, and it just didn't feel right to play the deck when I'm not running like Opposition Agent and Hull Breacher, these totally broken creatures, along with some of the other cards like, I wasn't playing Trinket Mage and Spellseeker and Dark Confidant. There's just some really busted creatures out there. The days of creatureless might be completely behind us, at least in Commander, in the way that I was trying to do it with that deck. But if they're not, or if you feel like you want to play it, I do think that it's very strong. It's a strong deck that relies heavily on its enchantments and can get completely wrecked when those don't come up. So I tried to go back to Kess, which abuses those cards very well and defends against them, and just put more defense into the deck. Been working with Brian behind the scenes. His version seems to be more polished than certainly the version that I posted previously. And what I've done is taken that, because he's been having success, and tried to tune it again. Now, the process of tuning, unfortunately, has been very painful. I will show you how many losses I've had. It started with the 5-color bad stuff on the initial version of Kess losses, which he beat me, I believe, 3 for 3. Really just like crushed me. And he was playing a combination of Timna and the red Jessica or Jeskai, the red Planeswalker. I don't know if I think I've got one. I can bring it up and you can kind of look at what the card does if you're not familiar with it. I'll read it off to you. So I'm just scrolling and looking for my 2 red. There it is. Jessica Thrice Reborn. So it's a partner commander. So you can partner it with Timna. And basically what it does is it triples the damage of one of your creatures. It doesn't give it triple strike, which would be even grosser, because that would like triple activate a card like Umezawa's Jitte. But it does triple the damage, so if you like pump something with Jitte, you deal triple damage. And then it has a minus effect that deals X damage to X of up to 3 targets. Now, it doesn't have a plus effect, but it's very cheap to cast and it's very cheap to recast. And the key is the minus effect, you have to hear what I said, up to 3 targets. That means the minus effect can come down and do something like kill your Jace, kill your Narset, and kill your Tezzeret. Or kill your commander, your Planeswalker, and hit you in the face. That kind of stuff. It makes it incredibly difficult to block if you're facing a Timna. And of course, if you can't block a Timna or get it off the board, then you're losing the game because your opponent's drawing 2 cards per turn, gaining life at the same time. It's bad news. So having faced that, and later, quite a few other decks, combo decks, a lot of CEDH hard decks to face, I've kind of come up with this build here. So this build seems to be working finally. Um, I was trying something a little different this morning and taking some pain. So it's only halfway through the day here, so I barely have enough data to really conclusively say, yeah, this is it. But I wanted to share it with you because I have a fantastic game that just shows you at least a little bit about how strong it can be. What I really like about good control deck, of course, is that the game shouldn't necessarily be over till it's over, and you'll see from this game that I'm going to illustrate that that was the case. Now, I'll show you. We're going to take a look at the record in a second. We'll talk briefly about what's going on here, but basically, excuse me. Earlier, what I tried to do is cut a lot of the like sort of high end busted artifact mana, the Grim, the Workshop, and Dynamo and Lotus and stuff, and I tried to increase my like cheap interactive cards. The problem was with that was that when you face another deck that's doing the same thing, winning becomes a little bit of a crapshoot. If they draw the right cheap interactive cards in the right order and you draw either the wrong ones or you draw the right ones in the wrong order, then you don't really have any comeback power. But cards like Lotus and Dynamo and the ability to cheat them out mean that you know with a Workshop or off a Grim Monolith or a Vault or whatever, means that you can sometimes just get ahead of their cheap interactive cards, and so you make more powerful plays, even though they can make like a number of small incremental gains. You can make these big haymakers, or you can make key plays and have enough mana to protect them. And without these cards, I just was finding that I couldn't consistently win counter wars or consistently apply multiple effects. Plus, you have to keep in mind that when you play Kess, your plan is to flashback something from the graveyard. And I often was coming up short on mana to do that. The other thing finally about the big mana cards is that they allow you to play your commander multiple times. That can be relevant if the opponent's stacked with removal, kind of like this is here. But in the meantime, I did stack this with quite a bit more removal. So there is collective brutality as an answer for both a threat like Timna or a Dark Confidant or something, but also a way to get into combo. It's also the only life gain card in the deck, so keep that in mind. There's a Braid, which we had before. Drown in the Lock, Is It Charm? I think we had all those before. But now I've got K-Command. Not sure if I had it in the earlier version. Electrolyze, definitely a new addition. Painful Truths for some massive value, potentially, drawing 3 cards twice with Kess, which is ridiculous, right? If you pull it off. Of course, we have Fire Ice before. We still have that. There's Thieving Skydiver still in there, See the Truth, all the good stuff. But in addition to that, I've also added a Flame Slash. I'm not sure if I had a Bolt before either. That's definitely staying, but I've added Flame Slash and I'm quite happy with it. This isn't new tech or anything, but this is good tech. And I understand a little bit better why quite a few opponents running these color combinations do run Flame Slash. It's just that a card like Kess or Zur, in fact, many commanders actually have 4 toughness, and Flame Slash just lets you get that little extra, so that you can essentially have a Swords to Plowshares for commanders, which is pretty important. A lot of times, it's nothing near the flexibility of STP, but often considering that. Remember, with Kess, you're replaying cards on your turn, so a Swords to Plowshares is an instant, of course, on the front end, but it's a sorcery speed on the back end if you're playing it with a Kess. So quite often, cards that are a little bit weaker, like because there's sorceries in here, don't feel that bad because when you replay them, you had to play them at that time anyway. So the fact that they're sorceries isn't as important as what they do and how efficient they are at doing it. There's a Spell Pierce in here, some more counters. I took out a Gitaxian Probe. If I'm looking at their hand, I want to be taking cards out of it. I like Probe for information. I like Probe for drawing extra cards, but the problem with Probe is slots, and if I have an open slot for a Probe, I can take that card out and make it an interactive spell that helps me not lose the game. Spell Pierce, Vandal Blast, Lightning Bolt, and so forth. So that's kind of it. Played around with the mana base a little bit. You can kind of look at that and see what you think about that. Basically, there's a fetid pools is an island swamp in here, an extra island in the deck. Kind of want to keep the island count high for shackles. There's a total of 8 here. So we've got the fetid pools. We've got the volatile fjord, the blue-red snowland, because there is no fetid pools equivalent. I think we had that before. Everything else feeling pretty good. You could drop to like 29 lands and add a Chrome Mox if you're feeling frisky, but I don't feel like that's necessarily like I don't feel like it has to happen. I don't feel like that's actually necessarily great. If you do that, maybe you're thinking about adding a Mox Opal as well. That could be a reason to do it. But I just there doesn't seem to be the slots for me, and you've got so much good early game disruption that I think that giving up a card to speed up a little bit might not necessarily be critical for this deck's success. So for now, I don't have the Chrome Mox in here, although it does feel like the card would be very good in here, and if maybe it'll get added at some point in the future. All right, so I'm going to take a look at the games here for you. So you can see in the last 7 days, the beatings I took from 5-color bad stuff were prior to a week ago. But you can see in the last 7 days, win-win, a couple losses, a bunch of wins, loss, win, loss, win, loss, loss. Not liking this record, right? But it's good because I don't like it at the time that it's happening because I don't like to lose that much, frankly. But it's providing me the information I need to make a better deck, and so I have to grit my teeth, and suffer through the losses in order to understand where my weaknesses are and try to polish the deck. It's just the pain of deck building is actually part of the deck building process. Unfortunately, is losing games. So you can see Hash 1 shows up quite a bit. Actually, beats me here, and a little bit further. Let's see who else we've got. The Dream Crusher shows up, beats me a couple times on the 6th. You can see JK22 beats me 1 game, loses 3 there. What else? Dream Crusher, I beat the Dream Crusher there. This was instructive, these losses here, because Dream Crusher was playing mono blue, and I had taken out Expedition Map, and I had taken out Cavern of Souls. And that was bad decision. I realized I got reminded why those cards are in the deck to begin with, so I went ahead and put them back in. See another loss to Hash there. A couple wins against Hash 1 and Forever Sleep here. Lost to Dream Crusher again. Couple of wins, and then after that, lost to Jet Dog. I'm not sure what happened there, and then a bunch of wins. So I'm going to go through the last game, but as you can see, I did all right in the last couple games against Hash 1, but Hash 1 has been a tough opponent, and the Dream Crusher's been, crushing my dreams of victory a little bit there as well. So those losses have been very instructive. I think the deck is better against them, but I'll report back to you when I get more information. In the meantime, I think that you might like to check out this last game, so that is what I'll be bringing up here. This was, a few hours ago? All right. So we'll go ahead and get started here. And once again, the partner mechanic is just broken. It's just super broken, in my opinion. It's just like all they have to do to fix partners is make it so that the commander tax is shared across partners. The fact that you get to start with 9 cards in hand and I get to start with 8 is a little unfair, but I get that, okay, I don't know. I maybe I just have to eat it on that, but the fact that you don't share the commander tax, that's just brutal. So my opponent gets to play a 2-drop, I have to kill it or it's going to beat me up. Then they play a 3-drop, I have to kill it or I lose the game. Then this guy costs 4 mana, I have to kill it or I lose the game. This guy costs 5, I have to deal with it or I lose the game. And that's so basically they just get to alternate duressing counterspells and removals out of my hand until I have lost the game, or find a way to stabilize and win. So we'll see what happens here. So I've already had to take a mulligan here, and I am going second, so I guess I'll get an extra card. I'm going to dump the Gilded Lotus. But that alternating effect of partners would be a little bit more manageable if at least, say Acri comes down, but now Timna costs 2 more. So then you've got some time, and Acri costs 2 more. I don't know, just like my commander always costs 2 more as opposed to as opposed to the way it works. But so be it. Anyway, my opponent leads off with a Curse of Opulence. And so here's a little bit of a read. So my opponent played an untapped Sacred Foundry in order to make this turn one play. Whenever I'm attacked, they get a gold token. And they took because they took 2 damage to do it. I normally would not just lead off with a Wasteland here, but I had the read that that might mean that they're missing colored mana, right? Because if they had any other land that didn't deal damage to them, they would have played that over the Foundry. So if they're missing colored mana, I want to. Their whole hand might be banked around the fact that they've got this Foundry. So I decide to waste them and take a chance. And then my opponent, for his second turn, goes Ancient Tomb, Spectre Shroud, which once it's equipped on a creature, if it deals damage to me, I have to discard a card. It's a little annoying, but the funny thing about playing this Kess deck is, unlike some of our other control decks, you can actually pretty safely give up a lot of card advantage in the short term because you can make up for it in the long term just like that. So we'll see what happens here. But so Ancient Tomb comes down. I'm like, oh, God, I wish I had that Wasteland, but, hopefully the gamble pays off. And on my opponent's next turn, they play a come into play tapped white only land. So maybe I had a good read. So at the end of their turn, I'm going to go get the always tapped Volatile Fjord and run out of Talisman. And if they miss a play here, unfortunately they don't. But then I would have been in great shape there. My opponent instead plays a artifact land and Infiltration Lens, and so now when the creature gets blocked, they draw 2 cards. If it's not blocked and it has a shroud on it, I discard. Pretty horrendous position to be in already. All right, so for my turn, I miss a land drop, but I do draw a Braid. So I just pass back and wait. Opponent puts the lens on their creature, swings in, and I make a huge mistake. I should have let them enter combat. I have a stop there, and then immediately abraded the Acri Lineslinger. But I let them go to the attack step. I thought, in my head, it was like when the creature deals damage to me. No, it's when I'm attacked. So now my opponent gets a treasure counter for no good reason at all. Of course, I abrade their creature, and because I gave them the black mana, the extra mana, they did find a scrubland, but they needed one more. They actually get to play the Tymna a turn early. Had I killed that, Tymna wouldn't be in play right now. So anyway, on my turn, I play Trinket Mage. I get a mana crypt. My opponent, of course, gets some gold, and I just chump here. My opponent does get 2 cards, but at least I get to keep the cards in my hand. I don't take damage, and I get their commander off the board. For their turn, they play Acri. They use one of their treasures. They play Stoneforge, and they go get a Ember Cleave, which once it comes into play, they can equip it. Equip cost is 3, but they can cheat it in with Stoneforge. It immediately attaches, and then the creature gets +1/+1 double strike and trample, which means, like on Acri here, it'll do insane amounts of damage super fast, setting me up for dying to either life total or commander damage. So I'm going to go ahead and move that down a little bit. So I'm really behind the 8 ball here. I draw a Wheel of Fortune for my turn, and after thinking about it, realize that I have to get more mana in play here. And I just have to basically, even though my hand was like all this lovely counter magic, I have to wheel and get that. I can't afford to get hit with the Ember Cleave there, so I wheel 5 cards out of my opponent's hand and 4 out of mine, 4 counter spells / interactive cards, and I find this here. And I hadn't actually played a land here, so I do get to play Verdant Catacombs and pass for the turn. And lucky me, I do find a Bolt. So depending on how this goes, I'll be all right. Well, I thought, but then my opponent plays Conqueror's Flail. So Conqueror's Flail, when it's equipped, so it's 2 mana to play, 2 to equip, it gives the creature +1/+1 for each color of permanent state control. So my opponent has a red and a white colors on their side right now, so +2/+2. And more importantly, bad as that is, as long as it's attached to a creature, so once it's equipped, the opponent cannot cast spells during your turn. So if my opponent actually equips this thing, I'm not going to be able to bolt. So what I really wanted was, of course, for my opponent to stack Spectre's Shroud and Infiltration Lens onto like Acri, and then swing in for a big, first striking thing, and they've got a Sunhome Forest. Maybe they'll give it double strike, and then I bolt it. But with this Conqueror's Flail hitting the board, they go to equip it. I actually have to bolt now, which means my opponent knows what I'm up to, and they can move. They can change their mind and put the equipment all onto the Stoneforge, bash me, and take a card out of my hand. So I throw away Night's Whisper. I can get it back with Kess. Brainstorm on my turn. Play a Talisman here. I'm going to close these out. Impulse, taking more mana, Preordain, ditching everything that I see, and then I make a slightly weird play here. So I get a deflecting swat, and I play Kess here. But remember, my opponent has Conqueror's Flail. I cannot deflecting swat. I do understand this. Um, I do understand this. Like the second that I like get to my end step, I go, oh crap, they've got Conqueror's Flail. This swat's not going to do anything. And so I really should have used Copy Artifact like on my Thran Dynamo or something, or on their Manascape Refractor, which is a really interesting card. But I did not slide it into there, and the problem is, of course, Spectre's Shroud will make me discard. And should they give their creature double strike with Sunhome Forest, I'll be discarding twice, which means my whole hand. So I'm really hoping Kess doesn't die. Opponent plays a land, Mana Crypt, Timna, moves the lens over, so they're going to draw 2 if I block, swings in, gets a gold token, and finally fetches and gives their guy double strike. I take it all. I take 10 and discard my whole hand, and my opponent gets to draw. And then on their turn, they play Leonin Shikiri, which allows them to play equip abilities as an instant, and they move their Paradise Mantle onto it. For my turn, I draw a Thieving Skydiver, which is really clutch here. Pretty awesome here, honestly. So I play it and steal the Conqueror's Flail, and then flashback Wheel of Fortune, finding a Toxic Deluge where both of my creatures live because I moved the Flail over, strip mine my opponent's Ancient Tomb, and pass. Now that Toxic Deluge was amazing because, of course, my opponent has all this Voltron-y equipment type stuff here, but they don't have any creatures right now, and I do have a Remand available. Plus the fact that I took the Conqueror's Flail means I can counter again, and of course, anything I want to do on my next turn, my opponent, can't respond to due to the Flail. And I'm hiding over here with a Spellseeker, so maybe you can figure out what I want to do. Of course, there's also Kess in this graveyard, which is very juicy. So we'll see if you work out what the game plan is. But in the meantime, my opponent runs out Acri Linesinger, and then, boy, I felt dumb not remanding that when I could, because now my opponent gets to deflecting. My opponent plays a 1-drop that clones equipment, which means that they're going to clone the Conqueror's Flail, which means that I'm not going to be able to remand anymore. So I have to remand a 1-drop instead of remanding the commander. And because the commander's in play, they get to deflecting swat the remand, which will fizzle it. They're going to target the swat. The swat will be off the stack. I don't get to draw a card from the remand, and they get the Conqueror's Flail, and they get to equip it. And just like that, their commander is this giant thing. Well, fortunately, I get to ponder into a DT, but I had a plan for Spellseeker, and I'm going to stick to that plan right now. So I Spellseeker for Vandal Blast. Yum! Boom! And I flashback a Lightning Bolt from the graveyard and smash in for a solid 8 damage hit. Now that Vandal Blast killed, this is just incredible, it killed the Masterwork, so it killed their Flail, their Crypt, so that's 2 mana, their Paradise Mantle, which is 3, Mana Refractor, 4 mana, Infiltration Lens, which is a threat, Great Furnace, which is 5 mana, and their Shroud, which is a threat, their Spectre Shroud there. So taking 5 mana off the board, almost half my opponent's mana here. On their turn, they're going to play this Thespian stage, and I'm sitting on opposition agent Demonic Tutor with Kess and a fat stacked graveyard. So we'll see how this goes. But opponent runs out Ghostly Prison, is at 12 life, has 4 mana, and scoops, which I agree with completely. So if it is over, right? Like now, if my opponent did not scoop here, I mean, if they Wrath of God or something, then the game's still on. But even so, I've got a billion mana, I replay Kess, and I can just we can do naughty things from there. My opponent's pretty much like, the problem was if they hadn't given up and they did not have interaction, then at the end of their turn I flash out Opposition Agent, or if they had a search card that I could nerf with that, I flash out the agent, and then 3 from the agent, 3 from Kess is 6, plus 5 plus 1 is 12. Opponent's at exactly 12, so I would flash out agent, and then on my turn, if I untapped and all of my creatures lived, the Conqueror's Flail guarantees my opponent couldn't do anything, so I'd be happily spend all the mana to pay for Ghostly Prison, smash my opponent, and finish the game off, and get the win. So I thought that was an incredible game because I was on the back foot, like just massively the whole time. Hail Mary, Wheel of Fortune, something that Brea normally cannot do, at least the builds of Brea that I've put together in the past. And wheeled into a little bit of mana, a interactive removal spell, and a search card to win that game. And I thought that was super awesome. So I feel like the Kess deck is coming along, and as you can see, I've begun to start hitting like decent win streaks. And a few of these folks here have definitely brought some threatening decks, but I still need to play against some of these others. I certainly hope 5-color bad stuff shows up to pressure me. I've got the Dream Crusher to face. I need to face Hash. I need to face anybody, Hash 1, anybody else that I can that's going to really press the deck hard, and then we'll see what happens with it. But so far, it feels really good to play this deck. Like, this version just feels fantastic, and I don't know how else to explain it other than that. But that's kind of like what you really want. You want that like excellent, that good feeling when you play your deck. That it's just like everything is it's sort of operating on all wheels. So we'll see. Obviously, there are changes we can make if it turns out I need more artifact removal. Here's a really good one that I've been considering. There's a lot of things we can still do, but for now, that is all I've got. I hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.